Rosie's Fueling Station and Drive-Through Brothel. You pump 'em, we hump 'em. How can I help you?
Yeah, I'd like the standard pump and hump, please.
Would you like a combo today, sir?
Yes. I don't even know what that means, but yes.
We'll supersize it for you.
Well, you don't have to do that.
I'll tell Big Bertha you said that.
It's not like she hasn't heard it before.
Oh, how are you?
Good. I was just using my recently acquired clippers, trying them out.
I'm so scared to ask upon what.
Well, let's say beard.
Does she know you call her that?
It's a
All
last
right.
name.
uh, so what
so
is up?
so um it occurred to us recently that people might have the idea that we're trying to push the faults for our own behaviors onto other people, especially of the opposite sex.
And your point is no.
And the reason people think that is all your fault.
Clearly. Yeah, no, but that's true. I mean, like, there are times when I think it sounds like we're just each saying what's wrong with the other side. And, like,
Right.
if y'all would just shape up, then this wouldn't be a problem anymore. But that's not really what we're out to do at all. I mean, that's not a very good way to save the world. Other people don't listen very well.
Right. And here's the thing about other people, you really don't have any control or say over them.
No, bastards. God, they just want to follow their own free will and shit.
I know.
Yeah.
What's up?
So, they're just ungrateful, is what it is. Um, but so this is in the spirit of us looking at the experiences we've had and the things that we know we have done wrong.
Right.
Or because we are, relatively bright people, seen other people do wrong, where we were able to go, wow, that really didn't work out well for them at all. Um, and take that as a learning experience and sort of apply that. And it's not going to apply to everybody. If you find yourself getting pissed off, then either it's not at all about you, it doesn't apply to you, and let it go, or it really really
Really
applies
does.
to you. And the reason you're angry is because we gotcha.
Yeah, and you want us to just shut up about
Yes,
that.
yes. And you know what the truth is I agree. I really, I would sometimes like for us to be able to shut up about it too, but we can't, and y'all are listening, so it's your fault.
Suckers.
But no, so we're not like, you and I, you love women,
I really
and
do.
you have daughters, and
And
you
I have
want,
done.
yeah,
Yes.
you want them to be able to have healthy, fulfilling relationships. And I love men, and I have sons, and I have a daughter as well, but I want everybody to be able to have those good, healthy relationships that, really leave us feeling seen and known and fulfilled. So it is in that spirit that I want to tell all the men in the world what they're doing wrong. But the women too. The women too. We get a lot wrong as well.
I feel like I want to um, give some, I don't know, support to the idea that I love women, and through a couple of points. One is my daughters are adults, and
Yes.
they like me.
Yes. That's huge. Your daughters choose to spend time with you. They enjoy
Yeah.
being with you, and that is a big thing. And my kids are younger. My oldest is 15 and a half, and my youngest is 10. But same thing. Even we're in the teenage years, and my kids like me. My boys like me.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
want to hang out with me. So, um, in fact, I asked. This is random, but my friend brought up a question the other day. I didn't know that this was a thing, but apparently the 21 run, that when the kid turns 21, you get to go out on a bar run or whatever, right?
Oh, okay.
So somebody brought up the question, would you do that with your kid? Would you do the 21 run with your kid? And I was like, well, I would, but I don't think they would want, like one of my kids
Right.
would. My 15-year-old would be all about that. But the two younger ones, I think they'd be like, no, ew, why? So I brought it up to my kids. All three of my kids were like, yeah, we totally would do that. Would be hilarious. Yes, let's make plans. So, not that my kids are looking forward to drinking or anything. I'm just saying.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what else do you love about women? What other support do you need? Because I totally interrupted you.
Well, my ex-wife and I, we were married for so many years, and we get along great. I mean, her and her parents came to my place for Thanksgiving. I went to their place for Christmas.
Yeah. When
Um,
you have good relationships with women.
I have almost entirely good relationships with women, even with all the shit that I say, or maybe because of it.
That's what I
There's
was going to say.
something we'll get into later, maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, and I mean, I agree with that. And I've always felt comfortable around men, and I've always really enjoyed what men bring to the table. Um, and for heaven's sakes, I mean, I realize I write romance novels, and so there is this sense of, that maybe I would idealize men, or that I would be just only willing to accept that perfect man, I
Oh
guess is
yeah,
actually
right.
what, that I would hold men to such a high standard. But I think it's probably been pretty clear in the way that I waffle on so many topics that I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt to pretty much anyone. And that very much includes men. And I don't, uh, we were discussing earlier whether or not I generalize about men, and you were like, no, you go the other direction entirely, and you try to make everything apply to everyone. Um,
Right.
because I don't want to point fingers. That doesn't do any good. It doesn't get us any further down the road. So,
Which brings us to the perfect segue into the first thing we're going to do is talk about if we're going to jettison the old ownership and chattel concept of relationships,
hmm
what do we have to do as individuals to reach that state?
yeah, yeah. So how do we move into that new deal? How do we drop the old paradigm
Yes.
and and move into a new sort of pattern?
And,
So,
and you mentioned the one that I was going to mention first, and that is stop fucking blaming everybody else.
well, yeah. I mean, that's really true. I mean, I know it's funny on movies to see all the women get together sharing wine and bitching about men,
Sharing
and
wine and wine.
yeah, wine and moan session. Um, and like we do occasionally need to do things like that, but your life becomes fucking men and the things they do, and
Right.
all you can do is complain about what men are doing to you, then I yeah, I would suggest that means perhaps you need to stop interacting in a romantic way with men,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
until you figure out what the patterns are that are not serving you well, because there are two people in that interaction.
One of the things that I have done since becoming single is that, and I've had several short-term relationships, and uh, every time one ends, it's not a fun thing.
Sure.
But what I do is, as I say, all right, what was the lesson there?
Yeah. Yeah.
And with the, maybe it's more than one, but usually there's one big one for me
Right.
for me to take away from that one. I go, all right, so let's not do that anymore.
And I think that's the key is let's I am
Me,
not going to do that anymore. It's
yeah,
not, oh well, I'm never going to, date another lawyer
right,
or dentist, or I'm never going to date another woman from um, that state or country or whatever. It's
yeah.
that I am, never again going to not, speak up about this, issue that I have, or this, a belief that I have. Because not speaking up about that it was the problem. My behavior. What did I do
Right.
that led me to this place, and how can I make sure I don't do that again?
And early on, a lot of it was, letting her drive things in the relationship.
Mm. Okay, now this is an interesting one because how had I guess okay, hold on, back up. How long? Because you know how I am. And the minute you start talking about taking control, I'm like,
Did
okay,
I?
that's sexy, but wait.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say control? I said I let her drive
You let her drive. Okay. Yeah.
things in the
So who
relationship.
else? Okay, well, only one person, if you're going to bring in a car metaphor, only one person can drive. So if she's not driving, who is?
Um, well, let's let's not make it a car metaphor.
Okay.
Um, let's make it a dancing metaphor.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
she was leading
Ah,
in that
okay.
dance, and
Hmm.
and I have one in particular that I have in mind, obviously. Um,
I never know who you're talking about
it's
when you
okay.
talk about these people. Well, I also just kind of want to say to everybody else listening, I never know who he's talking about. So unless he tells me, I don't really know,
I'd
and
I'd
I hope
I'd
I don't
rather
ever
I'd
say
rather
anything
leave names
offensive.
out. I'd just rather leave
Okay.
names out. So it's
Okay.
just simply that way.
Yeah. Sure.
Um, the way a man interacts with women, in the the way that a man ought to interact with women in a way that makes them feel comfortable and safe is like leading in a social dance.
Okay.
So it's not being in control
Hmm.
because it's even though we talk about leads and follows, leading isn't dragging her around the floor.
Right. Right. That's true. Yeah. I mean, if she's not comfortable, then she can just stop dancing with you.
Right, but even in the course of a dance,
Yeah. Yeah.
what the man does is very subtly with holding a firm frame and very subtly with small movements indicates to her what his intentions are, and she can follow or not.
Okay.
Right? But
I. You know.
if you're clear about expressing those intentions, she's going to follow. She's going to want to follow. Um, and in a relationship, it's the same thing. And you let me show you a small distinction. Right?
Okay.
Guy comes home and wife goes, what should we have for dinner? And the guy goes, I don't know. What do you want?
And 3 hours later.
Right? Yeah, he's eating chips and she's sulking in the bedroom. Contrast that to guy comes home, wife says, or partner. When I
Hmm.
say wife, I don't necessarily mean wife. Okay, let's just
Yeah.
put that caveat out there.
Yeah. I know.
Partner.
I mean, yes,
It's just
exactly.
it's a handy
It is. Hmm.
word.
Label. Yeah, I'm good with it.
Okay. She says, I don't know. What what do you want to do? Oh no, she says he comes home, she says, what should we have for dinner? And he says, well, I was thinking Thai food tonight. Now, subtly different
Yeah.
on the surface, but
Yeah, I mean, he's still not committed to it. He's not saying,
he's
I
not
have decided we're having pad thai.
right. He's not domineering her.
Yeah, he's not dictating.
He's not dictating, but um
It's not wishy-washy.
he's not wishy-washy. He's not um surrendering his
Yeah.
position to her. he, so it opens a dialogue, but one that he starts,
Okay.
right?
See, and I can get with that. it gets a little, my hackles immediately come up because we live in a society where man as the head of the household has been abused. Um,
Yeah, and I'm not talking about that at
right.
all.
No, you're really not. You're talking about just that confidence that we've spoken about
Right.
before, that having a stance and
Yeah,
not being afraid to express it, and but not in an aggressive way, which we'll get to in a minute.
right.
But just being willing to say, this is where I stand. This is where I would like to go. Would you like to go there? Or,
Mhm.
I mean, it's like you said, expressing the intention, taking that small step, and she can go with him or not.
Right. And there's when it comes to other things, um, and you ladies can just think about right now how you react to a statement like this. So the two of you are talking or not talking, you just start off with, um, hey, I'm going to go to the mall on Saturday. You can come if you like. Or would you like to come with me?
Okay.
As so how do you feel about that? I mean, that's what that's doing is telling the woman what your plans are and inviting her to come along. It's a lead step.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yes. Absolutely.
As opposed to we're going to the mall on Saturday or I'm going to the mall. See you later.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, no, I can get with that. I think that that's perfectly reasonable. It's funny that when you said that, I thought you were saying a woman saying that
No.
we're going to the mall on Saturday. You
Oh,
can come if you want.
that's a
It's a
completely different.
completely
That is so different.
Isn't it funny how, like, when you said that, I was like, oh man, she really wants you to go to the mall, dude. Go to the mall. Go to the mall.
Oh,
Um,
so
what?
so which kind of brings up, when you say that, brings up the concept that I've heard you mention before, and that is setting up for failure.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a I personally I see women doing that more than men, but maybe that's just my where my attention is.
No, no, I would agree with you on that one.
Okay.
I do. I think because of women's uh, strength in communication, that we are more likely to, first of all, to think that sentence, that communication to death, um, but then also to go in with a preconceived notion of how we want the question answered,
Ah,
and to do so in such a way that we appear to be allowing you a choice, but there's a right and a wrong, and you better choose right.
sometimes there's not
So
even a right.
no, there.
There's just multiple wrongs.
Yeah, no, I would, but I would agree with you on that. I think that women do have more of a tendency to set men up for failure. I think that I almost want to say that in a lot of ways, as the relationship goes on, over the length of a relationship,
Hmm.
women are more inclined to continually pose tests,
Why?
whereas men, all their testing is at the beginning of the
Yeah,
relationship, and if you pass, you're good. And
forever,
after that,
forever,
yeah,
and,
forever, literally forever.
until you prove otherwise.
Yeah, until you go batshit crazy when you hit your 40s.
Yeah.
But really, like, for men, it's all at the beginning, and if you pass, you pass. Whereas women, like, we need that constant reassurance, of you giving us the right answer, of you passing those little tests. That would be one of my things. I would like for women to stop doing that, to
Yeah,
stop
me too.
testing. And that goes in with the thing that I wanted to say, which is that I would like to see, like, on the spectrum of communication, one end is passive, and then at the other end is aggressive,
Hmm.
and right in the center sits assertive. And I think that women, by and large, tend to sit on the passive end of the spectrum, And men, by and large, tend to sit on the aggressive end of the spectrum. And I don't even mean like we're not talking about violent or anything. I'm just talking about pushier, more insistent, like what we talked about on the last podcast with the difference between like sexual assault and coercion. That
Hmm.
if a woman said, I'd really like to do this sexual thing, and a man said, I'm not into that, that she would maybe, present her reasons for wanting to do it. But if he really said no, in an assertive way, as men are wont to do, that she would let it drop. Whereas the reverse is that men are more inclined to be a little more aggressive in their communication and trying to get what they want. I mean, they've been socialized to do that. You have to do that to succeed as a man. So to go after what they want and to be a little more aggressive, and because women are sitting on that passive end, they don't know how to say no.
I read something not too long ago, sometime last year, about the distinction between power and force.
Yeah,
And I think they get conflated way too often. Um,
sure.
so, because what you're talking about is men, assuming they're not using actual power to change make the woman do what she wants, what
Yeah,
he
no
wants.
man.
They're just applying force, mental, emotional force to the situation
Sure.
to try and get their way. And women do that all the time in different ways.
Yeah,
And
because ours is a more passive, I think, sort of forcing, sort of force.
yeah, often, well, maybe not passive, but definitely more on an emotional level. Uh,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't because we have feelings when you guys get use that force, but I think that women are just more subtle about it, that we've been taught to make a run
sometimes,
around.
sometimes a
Sometimes,
lot.
sometimes.
This is where oftentimes sex as a weapon comes into play. That's the force that women know they can fall back on.
Well, I would like to take sex hands off again, is what I would like to look at. So no sex involved and no actual physical aggression on the point of men, on the
Okay.
part of men, but just the communication, the verbal and um, body language outside of those things. That women are still inclined to be more subtle, and I mean almost to the point of duplicity sometimes.
Mm.
Um, to not say what we mean.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
make an end run around the thing that we, really want, and to, instead try to lead, men by the nose, trying to get them to think it was their idea,
Sure.
so I would like to see women become more assertive in the sense of becoming less passive.
Listen,
Yeah.
women can, as far as my personal experiences, women can only benefit by being more plain spoken.
I totally agree. I mean, with the exception of the cases we've spoken of where it's an actually dangerous situation, which
Right.
violates our hands-off rule, I agree. I think women absolutely would benefit by gaining clarity around what their feelings are, what they really do want, not what they've been told they want. And this is something you brought up actually, and now I'm segueing into it because it's true.
Well, just one last point on that is
Yeah.
I've had lots of women come to me and say, "So, what does a guy mean when he says such and such?" I said, "Well, he means that." And then, no,
Yeah.
no, but what does he really mean? No, that's it. That's all. That's it. That's the whole.
Yeah.
And
There's
they have a hard time believing that we are that um, plain spoken and plain
yeah.
thinking, that we don't have ulterior motives most of the time when we say a thing.
Yeah, I mean, like when you're in a relationship where it's truly about, trying to make it work, that yeah, y'all usually aren't, yeah, you're not looking to figure out what the I don't want to say sneaky, but the subtlest way around, the way the least obvious, the least able to be seen
Right.
way is. Like there's not, I don't want to say men aren't manipulative because they certainly can be, but I don't think And we see it very early on, even in preschool, when you see that, that 4-year-old girls are already doing the, well, you can't come to my birthday party,
Right.
bullshit. Whereas boys are just like, I'm gonna punch you in the face.
Yeah,
And
I'm gonna punch you in
women
the
are,
face. We'll wrestle around for a while, and then we'll go play.
yeah, exactly. And with girls, like, I mean, I was a preschool teacher. Like, I taught 2 and 3-year-old girls, and I would see them do that to each other. Just, even like if two girls were playing and another girl came along, like the two girls turning their bodies away,
Hmm.
as if to be like, you can't play with us.
What?
Um,
There's no teaching that at that age, right? You can't sit down with a 3-year-old and explain that shit. They know. They just know.
I think so, although I would also argue that
They're. Go ahead.
everything kids watch. I've watched
Mm.
a lot of preschool shows, and some kids watch
Oh,
older. So even if they're watching the Nickelodeon stuff that's for preteens, you get a lot of that. It's really ridiculous how insidious
but
and
but
far-reaching that stuff is.
let
But
me just speculate that this was going on long before TV.
well, no, that's true. I think in general, because boys have always been, if not encouraged, then at least allowed to express their feelings physically,
Hmm.
and girls have always been encouraged to express their feelings quietly. Really. That's,
Ladylike.
huh?
Ladylike.
Yes, exactly. To be ladylike, to be quiet, but and yet women have things they want, and
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
so,
whoa.
well,
I'm
no,
not
but
just gonna let that go by.
no, 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 no. But wait. But because I'm including men in this too, but women and men, and they have things they want. But when we get to a point of adulthood
Yeah.
where those ways, that ladylike shit doesn't serve us, it really doesn't. That ladylike
No.
shit is for the comfort of everyone around us. It's not for us.
Right.
So when we get to a point of adulthood and ladylike doesn't serve us, but men, the aggression that they've been encouraged to have has served them, we still get to a point where we all want things, right? And men have this very direct, forceful way of being able to get it that we have been told is not our path. And so it does sometimes feel like that's all that's left to us, or at least that's the first and most acceptable
Yeah.
path we try, is the quiet, sneaky runaround, rather than just the direct, you know, straight through all the guards to the end zone.
Yeah. Very true. And it's not helpful these days. It's really not. Um, but you run into complications. But this is a topic for another time. Like in a early stages of a relationship, although you want to be open and vulnerable and honest, you really got to take it in steps. You can't just
Yeah.
you can't just blah everything on date one because
No.
people freak out when you do that. I hear.
Well, it's funny too. I've thought a lot because I haven't started dating yet. I mean, I'm not even technically divorced, although I'm very separated. But I haven't started dating, but I've thought a lot about, like the first date advice. Like they always say, don't talk about your ex on the first date and stuff like that. And I'm like, but that's such a rich
Gold mine.
topic. It really is. Like I could learn so much, and I'm not scared of that kind of stuff. And yet I think, yeah, no, that probably is a little deeper than most people want to go just after the just meeting somebody. But not me, because I don't do small talk. So what the hell am I going to talk about on a date? I guess just
String theory.
I have some reading to do.
Here's what I want. I want to be able to hand over references.
Yeah.
Hey, call these women up, have a chat with them, and then get back to me.
Wouldn't that be that there are times I really want to do that too. I have even offered, this is so silly, but with my ex, because we do get along
Hmm.
really well. Like I've always kind of felt like, hey, like if they're ever worried that, like you have a crazy ex or something, like I'll come, have coffee with y'all or something. and be and be like, no, he's totally cool. Like, he said that we have our issues, but I'm not assuming they're gonna pull forward. He's a good guy. Give him a shot.
Right.
Um, So it's, yeah, references would be handy.
Yeah.
But that probably only works with adults. I mean, like adulty adults.
Adult. Advanced adulting.
There you go.
Master level.
Gifted, gifted adults.
And if you're on that course of becoming an advanced level gifted adult, you're probably gonna land somebody and be fucking happy. And then you don't
I,
need the references.
that's true. I mean, I think once we get to the point of being advanced level adults, we should have the discernment. And this is okay, so this is a thing, back to the dancing metaphor, because my instant gut reaction as a woman who does not, okay, so the truth is,
Dance.
I dance. Toes don't come out of it intact, but I dance. But no, but so as a woman who has not been led well by
Ah,
men,
yeah.
and that's not even like I haven't been. I mean, my childhood was somewhat emotionally, abusive or neglectful, but I've never had well, and a little bit of physical, but in any case, I've never had like a traumatic, relationship that was really horrible patterns. Like, my ex and I, we didn't have any of that toxic shit. Um,
Hmm.
but I still don't trust anyone really. But to say that I would put myself in the hands of a man and trust that he's going to lead well, I think one of my things is that women also have to become more discerning.
Oh yeah.
You know, yeah, because we've been told again all our lives, Cosmo and even the teen magazines, get a man. Here's what you need to do to get a man. Here's what you need to be. Here's what you need to look like. All this stuff. It's all focused around getting a man. And
A very non-specific type,
a
right?
very yeah, non-specific and not
Like the Queen song, find me
somebody to
somebody to
love.
love, somebody,
Yeah.
anybody, I don't care.
Yeah,
Is she
exactly.
breathing? That's not a deal breaker.
There's a great song. It's not a great song, but it's a fun song called Just My Type or My Type. And the line in the chorus is, "You're just my type. You've got a pulse and you're breathing." um, but yeah, like to realize that not just any man is going to lead you well. You
Right.
know, some men, they may start off with a waltz and then it turns into, grinding on you. And that may not be where you wanted to go. And like just to realize that it's okay
Mm.
to to say no to some men and to not always be so hungry for that love, and to stand on your own first,
You
to
got,
know that
yeah.
that is a fundamental part of being an adult woman. I think it's something that is taken for granted, I think, for men, but not for women, is that really standing on your own first.
You got to
And
be,
some,
and this goes for a lot of guys too. You have to be comfortable alone.
yeah. And I feel like some people
Otherwise, you're going to
are,
compromise somewhere.
yes, you are, in order to not be alone and
Hmm.
because you think that you're not whole on your own. Um, and I think some people reach that point at, 16 years old. I've seen some really fierce young men and women who at 16 years old are like, no, I got this. Like everything else can wait. I've got to handle mine. And other people don't reach it ever, you know?
Yeah,
Um, but I think that women have to become more discerning and to realize that just anybody holding you is not what you're looking for.
I was never so tickled and laughed so hard when my 3-year-old youngest daughter um, interrupted my wife and I were teasing her about whose girl are you? Are you daddy's girl? Are you mommy's girl? And she started getting all confused and she put her hands up and stopped us both and said, "No, I'm my own girl." And then, oh boy,
Yes,
I
the
love
groups
it.
just want to celebrate. I
Oh
this
yeah,
is
it was
this is
hilarious, surprising, and wonderful all at the same
yes,
time.
so wonderful. I remember, so this is not exactly that, but it was another little just getting tickled at my daughter. I was walking up the stairs behind her, and God, their butts are just so cute. And, and I just poked her on her little butt, and she was probably 6. And she turned around and slapped my and I like paused for a minute, and then I went, okay, so you know what? You could have just told me to stop, but that is actually the exact right response for anybody that touches your butt without asking. It was just like, yes, girl, do it. Own it. Own me. That's fine.
Yeah.
I read a really wonderful article today on in the wake of the gymnastics Dr. Nassar, or whatever his name is,
Mm-hmm.
the whole scandal of how to protect your children from being abused in that way. And the very first thing on that list, which I cannot agree more, like I would make a banner and hang it from our rooftop, is allow your children to resist authority, starting with yours.
Absolutely. We actually had a policy uh, between my wife and I that if we couldn't justify the things that we were asking our children to do, then we had no business asking them to do it.
Exactly. If you cannot, and a lot of parents are like, well, I'm the parent and I shouldn't have to
That's
explain
not
myself.
that's not a valid position in my opinion.
No, mine either, because there are a lot of parents who are shitty parents and shitty adults and shitty people. And just because they want something does not make it the right thing. And that's the first mistake we make with our children, is teaching them that there is any authority over them other than them.
Yeah.
And it really has to be their choice. You have to be such a trustworthy, compassionate, generous, so obviously concerned about their welfare person in their life
Yeah.
that they want your guidance, that they appreciate your authority because they know you have their best at heart. And that only continues, though. I mean, like it slowly shrinks your authority as they grow more into
Yeah,
themselves
as they
and
assume more responsibility for themselves, right?
yeah, and as they have more awareness of what their goals are and their motivations, and they take over knowing what is best for them.
Yep.
But yeah, but I mean that's again that puts people and women, but even men in the position of not knowing what is best for them because they have not been allowed to stand up successfully,
Oh,
and advocate for
absolutely.
themselves.
Absolutely.
So,
I've been through that myself.
oh yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's part of, growing up without a self. If you don't have a self, you don't know what's best for yourself.
Yeah, very true. And I
So,
would say that's part of why I chose my husband, was because I didn't know what was good for me, but
hmm
I knew that he had a pretty good head on his shoulders, and that doing what he thought was good for me was not going to be too far off from what I would like if I knew what to do.
yeah, and that was pretty true, wasn't it?
It was absolutely. I think until the point, and it took being in the relationship with him and having the freedom to explore and to some extent even sometimes to lead, um because that is one thing
Oh,
that my
yeah, that's okay.
yeah
When I
um
just to clarify, when
yeah
I'm saying a man takes the lead, sometimes the discussion that follows is, all right, let's why don't you, run with that one, whatever the
yeah
thing
or
is.
acknowledging that the woman in the partnership or the other person in the partnership has more knowledge, more time, more motivation, more
Absolutely.
opportunity to affect that change, but that, yes, this is a place I want to go and I think you've got it well in hand. Go for it. And yeah, and that's exactly what he allowed me to do.
How cool.
Um, yeah, I mean, it really was, and it was just that, that that mission he quote allowed me to go off on took me to a place where I grew to want something
Yep.
beyond what he was capable of providing.
That's always the risk, isn't it?
It is, but even that, he still was willing to let it happen. I mean, it was not easy. going through the process of deciding that we wanted to get a divorce. But I remember very clearly on May 26th of 2016 telling him, I think you're going to have to let me go, but I need you to do it lovingly. And he did. I
Yeah.
mean, really, for all the little complaints I may have and the little ways I may poke fun at him, he has done an extraordinary job of letting me go lovingly. Um, but yeah, I mean, where were we before that? Because we started with the talking about the power
Well,
of
I
seven.
just want to tack on one more thing to what you're saying, and it's
Hmm.
something that I didn't realize until I was going through my divorce and how fortunate I was, and that maybe one of the steps in evaluating a potential partner is asking yourself, what's it going to be like to break up with this person?
I think that's absolutely a good
Because
thing.
who you start off with is who you end up with, and
Yeah.
if they're, less than stable in
Hmm.
difficult situations, guess what? That shit's
Yeah.
gonna get really big.
Or if you had the opportunity to see them break up with who they were with before you,
Yeah,
and how they behaved through that, don't assume that's going to be any different with you.
right.
So but I think that's true. And I think I actually did. I mean, we've talked about how odd I was as a teenager, but in addition to my
It never gets
being
old.
yeah, for me neither. But in addition to the ways that I would look at a person and know it wasn't going to last, I think I did do a lot of that of how ugly is this going to get? Like how mean are you going to be about this?
Hmm.
Um, and I think that is part of the reason that I chose safe. That my goal was peace, like we've talked about, is that you know because even then, when your stated goal before you get married is we're going to love each other until we don't anymore, that allows for the possibility that one day you may not love each other anymore. And when your goal is peace, and when you know that you're standing with somebody that you can have that goal with,
Yeah,
it is a safer prospect than, as much as you may love somebody else and their passion and their fire and um, all that stuff. It when it's aimed at you, it's not always so great.
yeah. When it's yeah, it could.
Yeah.
So who you start with is who you end up with. So choose wisely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in that way, I should stop
Yeah.
beating myself up or regretting my choice of my ex, because
No.
if
Why?
that's what we're, well, I know, but we've talked before about how I think like I made a wrong choice,
It,
and there's some uh, arguments to be made for that, but at the same time, it was like, no, it was a good choice. Who I started with is who I end up with, and that allowed me to have 20 years of really incredible growth in a relatively safe space,
hmm.
um, and to end it in a way that was loving and peaceful and not traumatic.
And to add one more thing,
Hmm.
and I was initially thinking this mostly on the part of the guys, but it applies to the women too. It doesn't have to be a shitstorm if you don't turn it into one.
It really doesn't. We always have choices. I mean, I know every single person, and if they say they haven't, they're lying. If somebody says something to you, you have a choice
Yeah,
whether to take it in a way that allows you to get upset, or to take it in a way that allows for, maybe that didn't really come out the way they meant it. Maybe I didn't hear that the way they meant it.
right.
And to, or maybe that behavior didn't mean what it would mean if I did it. And so, not taking everything so fucking personally, even when it is hurting
Yeah. Well, and I also mean that there are ways of going about things that difficult things
you.
that are less hurtful than others.
Yeah,
You don't,
there
I
absolutely are.
mean, like you can say, honey, it's been a long time. We've had all this experience. It's all been mostly for the best, but I need to go a different direction, and I'll do everything I can to, make this as easy on you as possible, or get the fuck out, bitch.
Yeah, and you see it both ways. I mean,
Oh yeah,
and sometimes they say one thing and do the other on both sides, men and women. But the sense of, oh yes, we can make this work, and then one wrong step, one thing that they can get upset about, one putting their toe back in that pattern, and it's all shot to hell, and
yeah.
take no prisoners.
Well,
Um,
you did point out one of the things we wanted to put on the list of getting it to the advanced adulting is um, stop making so many goddamn assumptions about people and their
oh,
meanings
did I say
behind things.
that?
You
Oh,
did.
I'm so smart. But yeah, no, I mean, really, well, I mean, you've said that before. Just because that's what it would mean if you did it doesn't mean that that's what it meant when I did it.
Right.
Yeah, to just have questions, even though it's almost more important when you're getting divorced, to be willing to open those lines of communication, because you cannot hold on to that shit and still get an amicable divorce. You have to let it go,
Right.
and just move forward with what you have now. And I think that's part of why my ex and I can do that, is because he still does the same stuff that he has always done for 20 years. Of course he does. I do too.
Yeah.
But now it's not my problem, and I don't make it my problem. I think that's the difference, is realizing, letting it go, really saying that is not my problem anymore. I can put that down and walk away from it,
Well,
and then
and
doing it.
yeah, absolutely. And also, if you're ever going to get out of the early stages of a relationship and into intermediate stages, that's something you just got to be able to do.
Well, it's hard when you're watching your whole marriage go away, I think. I mean, it's one thing to say that you have to let, the arguments go during the course of a marriage, and
I'm
that's
no,
true,
no. I
but
mean, I'm not saying let the
oh,
arguments go. I'm saying let go of assuming.
oh yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're going to get anywhere in a relationship that is at all fulfilling, you're going to have to stop assuming and start asking questions. Oh, and that brings me to what might be my final thing that I want men to do,
Uh,
um, which is, and I feel safe saying this because I think science has documented pretty well, men are not as good of listeners as women are. Um,
mm,
that when it comes to,
listening for what? That would be my question.
okay, well, that men tend not to gather the intention of what the person was trying to say, or they're more likely to hear what they wanted to hear, to cherry pick out of conversations. And I know that's one that's going to feel resistant to you, but that's one
Oh
that I
shit, I do
very
that all the time. That's how I listen. I mean,
okay.
no, but
Okay, which is fair,
what
but
I
I think
mean by that,
women,
what I
uh-huh.
mean by that is I don't store an entire conversation in my head. I say,
Okay.
oh, that's an important point. That's an important point. That's an important point. That's an important point.
Okay, I don't know if I can speak for all women, because I acknowledge that I am a crazy little ball of anxiety with a radically ridiculous memory.
Mm-hmm.
I do exactly that. I store entire conversations.
Yeah.
I run them over in my head. I could literally repeat back to you conversations that I had, months or years ago. And I think that that's part of it. Men cherry pick, whereas women do take it all in. And not only that, but like the article you posted or sent to me about, men are not as good as reading nonverbal communication either. So then they really miss a lot of the conversation, the
Mhm.
communication that is happening.
Yeah.
So I would like to see men work a little harder on really trying to listen. Um, women should be more clear and more straightforward, because it's not fair to tell a man to listen to everything if you're also cloaking it in layers upon layers.
Right.
Um, but for men to really get active listening skills.
Um. Okay. What was the second part?
course, it's a smart ass. It's part of why I adore you, and part of why you are so lucky you live on the other side of the country.
Yeah,
There are
we can't
days,
ever do these like in a studio, can we?
there are days that if we lived even like within an hour of each other, I would drive to your house to punch you on the arm and then get back in my car and drive home.
And I would be laughing the whole time you drove home. I can't believe
You
she did
probably,
that.
and after like the second time, I fully expect you would open the door with a super soaker or a Nerf
Or,
gun
you
or
know,
something.
something.
If you bring out the paintball, I'm gonna have to start wearing a vest.
Yeah. So, isn't there some place in the middle though? You know, where men can, try to listen and notice more nonverbal shit. What would be the women's side to come towards a middle point there? Or was that it just
Well,
being more plain spoken?
I think that's a fair trade there. Women to be more out plain spoken and men to listen more closely. I think two things together would solve a lot of problems.
You know what's interesting is somewhere in my library of dating books that I acquired early on, there's one about body language. And guess what most of the pictures are describing? Women's
I have
body
no idea.
language.
Right? Because y'all need the help. We've been studying this
It's
stuff for
not,
years.
yeah, and it's not just, what I'm saying is it's not just a book for guys, but everything is about the woman's body language and what the fuck that means. And we're like, you mean that if she points her toes, so does every time she point her toes at something mean a thing, or how the hell do you know? Or
But see,
but still,
you're at
yeah,
such an unfair advantage because I started learning that stuff at like 12. YM magazine,
yeah.
the all the teen stuff, and especially Cosmo and everything. If you want him to pay attention to you and know that you're interested, brush your hair behind your ear. Make sure that your knees are pointed in his direction. Reach out when he says something funny and just gently touch his hand as you laugh. All of that stuff we've been trained to do from childhood.
And yet we're not trained to receive that.
Exactly. Exactly. It
Ever.
and we but yet because we've been told to do it, we expect you to pick up on it. And the thing is you guys do pick up on it, but because I think to some extent because you don't know we're doing it deliberately,
Right?
you aren't doing, I mean, like you said, you're not aware of it, and so you're not able to deliberately take it in and really process it as the deliberate tactic it is on our part, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
And
again, you're at an unfair advantage because we aren't even always, I'll tell you a secret, we're not even always doing that because we like that man that much. We just want to see if that shit works.
or you may be pointing your knees at the guy 3 rows back.
Well, I mean, most of the stuff I'm talking about is close quarters,
Yeah.
but yeah, even then to some extent, that brushing your hair back from your face and looking down and looking up at him from underneath your lashes, dude, y'all fall for that shit.
Mm.
I'm sorry, what you do? But we have to test it out to be sure. And meanwhile, y'all are unaware completely that you are all every day part of a scientific experiment that women are running because we are paying attention to all those little things.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be weird and tragic if men thought the way that women did?
Oh God. If men thought the way women did, what would be the point of having genders? For one thing.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question because you brought this up earlier. There are times when I wonder with what we're asking of men, are we asking them to be better men or are we asking them to be more like women?
More like women, almost universally.
See,
Because
that's a
because
problem.
that's what women understand as other women. So obviously men have to be more like women so that they understand them without effort.
So what are men asking women to do?
Um, I don't know that men are asking women to do anything. They, first of all, men want, and I think I've mentioned this before, men want a recipe. They want a cookbook. They want a magic formula of some kind that works reasonably often, and
Yes.
which is the basis for the entire pickup artist industry.
Yes.
They claim they've solved this mystery of what
Not
getting women,
always be successful, yeah.
or even, you know, better than even odds.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, true.
do this, do this, do this. You'll get the results you're looking for often
Which are
enough.
probably just to get laid.
Yes, that's all that they are. And none of
Yeah.
their, by the way, none of their steps are about being authentic.
No,
It's all
no.
about putting on a show and saying tricking. It's all about being false and being manipulative.
It is interesting to me though, now that you put it in those terms, that I'm thinking, well, gosh, poor women, we have to look out for men like that. But then I'm like, wait, that's just them teaching you to do the things that I just said we've been taught to do.
Oh no.
Except, except that I think the stated goal is the only difference because it's the same thing. It's men, the pickup artist line is men being told to be whatever she wants, right?
Right.
To be
What
whatever
what
she
she
wants, and
what
says
whatever
she
she
wants.
will respond to.
Yeah, and what she says she wants with her body language, with her response
Mm-hmm.
in that moment,
Yep.
which is what women are being taught to do from childhood. So it's just that the goal for women is supposed to be to have a lifelong romantic relationship, whereas the pickup artist is stated goal of just to get laid.
Well, but they're out in bars where I'm pretty sure the goals are similar, right?
You'd be surprised at how many young women expect going out to bars, drinking with their friends, and meeting some other guy drinking out at a bar with his friends, how often they hope that that will turn into a true romance.
I'm not
So,
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but my point is still that what is my point? But no, I know what my point was, is that really those goals, those pickup artist goals on either side, they really only serve to get you laid. That's as far as that goes.
Right.
And I think that's what is so disillusioning to women, is that we've been taught to get laid, but we've
Mm-hmm.
been taught that our goal is not to get laid.
Yeah, you have the tactics
Exactly. And it's
for
not
for
leading to the
one
goal
for
with
one
them.
target, but the agenda of a different. Um, yeah,
And
so
and
so they don't line
and
up.
they don't, but then we blame men
Right.
for responding to what those tactics are for,
Interestingly enough,
rather than what we've been told they will lead to.
Interestingly enough, Alison Armstrong has a book called Understanding Men, and it's a very thin book, and it addresses that very topic, that exact topic. And it talks about, if you, it's the shiny hair and the athletic build and all those things. And
Yeah.
if you do those things, what's the response you're going to get from men? As opposed to doing this other set of things, which is, to get a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it very clearly defines that. If you do this set of things, that guy's just going to want to have sex.
Yeah.
But if you do this other things, now he's interested.
Mm. And I think we're back to being plain spoken.
It's not just that. I mean, it helps to understand. I understand. I read Alison Armstrong stuff is generally written for women, but I learn a lot about women and men from reading her stuff and listening to her podcasts.
I was
It's
very intrigued.
fascinating.
I was very intrigued to see that she had a book about women as well.
Oh yeah,
That we
sure.
talked about. It looks really, really interesting.
The Queen's
And
Code.
yes, the Queen's Code. I like that. Damn it, I just like that title.
Yeah,
Because we need a code. There should be a code of good women. Just like used to be sort of a gentleman's code,
right,
um, of, this is what constitutes adult male behavior.
right,
It's the man who, when he sees a woman being taken advantage of, steps in, you
right.
know. and not because she's weak, but because
That's what men
she
do.
that's what men do. She is being taken advantage of, and would do the same for a child, or anybody else that they saw being bullied. um and I think that women need to, at least within ourselves, form a code of behavior, because right now it really is kind of an anything goes for
Right.
women.
Yeah, it really
um
is.
it really is, and it's disturbing to see from the point of view of a woman who I really, in the last several years, developed a strong sense of, I don't have any other word for it than honor. Um,
Mm, yeah.
that I want to be a woman of my word, and I really, I want people to know that by my behavior, by my actions, that I am reliable, and that I do speak plainly, and that I mean what I say. And I just I it really is that same ideal that we have put on men for so long. I think women need to take on the same thing.
Women generally do not have the same concept of honor that you have described. Um, and oftentimes don't even understand it in men. The concept like, hey, my duty requires me to leave you behind and go risk my life for a larger cause.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Titanic, the sinking boat discussion we
Yeah,
had.
which is stupid
um,
because it's like, why couldn't he get on the board with her?
mm, okay, this is, I'm such a trivia nut. No, they actually tried. They deliberately, Cameron deliberately picked a board that would not hold
Okay.
both Kate Winslet and what's his face's Leonardo DiCaprio's weight. They would have been in the water.
Okay.
I just, like, I don't even particularly like James Cameron, but that's always bugged me. And he was like, no, he couldn't have. They would have both died. So, but no, but it's true that yeah, that men will do that, that they will give their very lives. And I've
for
said before,
for
that
their honor, and they
yeah,
will.
for their honor.
Yes.
And that is not something that's expected of women. We're expected to do that for our children, but really not for anybody else. And I'm okay with that, but I think we need our own code of honor.
Well, something that I mean, uh, if women had their own code of honor, no matter to what was included in that, at least they would give them a better understanding of why men have one and why they react so strongly to it.
Yeah.
And
And
instead of, oh, Ashley, please don't go.
well, she always pissed me off.
Oh,
Melanie and Scarlett both really just
right.
a martyr and a freakazoid. God. That
talk,
was
talk about manipulative.
really, and not, for being so fierce, not at all her own whole person.
No.
Wherever will I go? Whatever will I do? I just, anyway, but maybe that's part of how I'm different, is that I have always been troubled by Scarlett O'Hara, and Melanie was a simpering little
Yeah.
martyr, but at least she did have a code of honor, I would say.
Yeah, and
And it was of the time, but it was a code of honor.
Scarlett was attractive, but Jesus, she was batshit.
She really was. I think those two, like, we need a melding of those two archetypes. Of,
We need to throw both of them away and come up with something different, frankly.
yeah,
I mean,
but
you're right. She had the opportunity, speaking of Scarlett, to become her own person. She rebuilt, the
Tara,
plantation, Tara,
yeah,
from scratch,
yeah.
and didn't change through all of that.
Yeah, no. And it's interesting, Rhett never wanted her to change, but I think he just wanted, it was almost that bad boy thing we talked about, where you
Yeah,
want to be the exception to their rules. He wanted to be the exception, and for her to treat him with honor, and she didn't know how.
right.
So, anyway. All righty.
It's
Well,
been
listen,
an honor talking to you.
Nice, nicely done. All right. Well, I am definitely raring to do this again soon because we have brought up some interesting stuff. And I'm going to read an Alison Armstrong
Cool.
book.
Can't wait to
All
talk
right.
about it. All
Cool.
right.
All
See
right.
ya.
I'll talk to
Bye.
you soon. Bye.